All right, so we have a nice little uh, opportunity here. We have Brett Jones, who I'll have him introduce himself here in a little bit, but he's longtime sort of pioneer with the StrongFirst kettlebell movements. I personally, if you guys have been sort of following me in my training for the last 3 or 4 years, have really dug deep into kettlebell training, and actually this fellow, along with StrongFirst, has been really a huge source of information and been hugely helpful. So we're super pumped to have him on the podcast because he is going to be teaching 2 workshops: Kettlebell 101 on Friday afternoon, May 17th, and Kettlebell 201 on Saturday morning, May 18th. So I guess before we dig into what are those, for people that don't know who you are, Brett, I know that if you're a strength training person or certainly a kettlebell person, you've certainly made a name for yourself. Why don't you just kind of give them a quick intro?
Sure. I'm a certified athletic trainer, been with the NSCA, CSCS for the past 25 plus years. First got certified in kettlebell training with Pavel in February of 2002. Got my first kettlebell in late 2001, and have progressed up the ranks, as you would say, into being a master instructor and now director of education for StrongFirst. Also presenter and work with functional movement systems, Gray Cook and the gang. And so, yeah, it's been the Grateful Dead nailed it. What a long, strange trip it's been.
Yeah, and you're jumping back on the. I was hoping that we were going to be able to teach you the same weekend, but you're going to be teaching at Perform Better Chicago, right?
I am. I'm gonna actually. I got to talk to Chris real quick and see if I can update the name of my talk. But yeah, I'll be in Chicago, and been years since I had the ability to and time to get on the Perform Better circuit. So really looking forward to being part of the event.
Yeah, you'll be a great addition. So what's exciting? Well, as I said in the intro, you judged my Sinister. You were so kind and gracious to give me some pointers along the way in my 18-month, 30,000 swing, 3,200 Turkish get up journey. And it really, really did help because I wanted to just submit a really clean Sinister. I won't bore everybody. If you don't know what Sinister is, you can look it up online. But I'm super excited that you're going to be in town teaching your Kettlebell 101 and 201. Again, that's on May 17th in the afternoon. That's a Friday. And then also 201 is May 18th on Saturday morning. Why don't you just give us an idea for, what are these classes all about? Who are these classes for, and that kind of thing?
Absolutely. StrongFirst, we like to consider ourselves the school of strength. So we went with a very scholastic model for laying out our workshops. And Kettlebell 101 is, as the name would indicate, an introductory or entry-level workshop. And essentially, it's Pavel's Simple and Sinister program. So something you know quite a bit about. And so we take you through this Simple and Sinister warm-up, the get-up, the deadlift to 2-arm swing to 1-arm swing, talk about some programming, and really lay that solid foundation for your kettlebell training and get your technique dialed in. And then 201, Enter the Kettlebell, is a classic text from Pavel where he laid out a clean and press program and a snatch program. So Enter the Kettlebell covers the kettlebell clean, press, and snatch, and then programming and things of that nature. So you don't have to have attended 101 to take 201. You can hop into 201 if you feel like you've got a good command of the basics there. But the combo over a weekend is really just a fantastic chance to get eyes on your form and really get a good foundation to your training.
Yeah, just for people that are listening, my first meeting with Brett, I've of course known you from reading your stuff and following you online for years, but I don't know if you remember when I took StrongFirst SFG1 maybe 3 years ago. You were sort of there at the Dome, which I'll be back to, hopefully pressing a 48 kilo bell. We'll see. But I remember you came over and you gave these really, really good, simple cues. You peeled back the exercises really well. And as somebody that, I was a Division I strength coach and throwing coach for years and had been lucky enough to have been around, world-class coaches. And I thought you did a world-class job there of not being overly complex, listening to the athlete, and giving very, very simple but powerful cues and it was a girl just learning how to swing. And man, when you were done with her, she was just popping and floating. It was fantastic.
Thank you. Thank you. It's been, it's been, I referred to the long, strange trip it's been, but go back into 2003 when I first started teaching with Pavel, really organic beginning where, the same 5, 6 instructors are showing up at each cert and we're interrupting each other and saying, oh, have you tried this? Did you think of this? You forgot this. And, we're bouncing ideas back and forth and,
Building the car as you drive it.
exactly. And then, fortunately slash unfortunately, when you feel like you've got the car built, then you want to standardize the process and make it repeatable. And I would say for me, the two biggest things as an instructor, online training. Online training forced me to be a much better instructor. And I started doing this over 8 years ago. So this has nothing to do with the pandemic. I started offering online training and doing video sessions over 8 years ago.
Wow.
And so, and what you discover very quickly is where normally if I'm in the room with you and I can walk over and go, do this, things happen pretty quickly. Well, now
Yeah.
I have to figure out how to give you the nudge and I'm thousands of miles away. And so from an instructor standpoint, that does nothing but elevate your game. And I've definitely discovered the more I remove myself from the process, the cue, the drill, the better results we get. And so I think what's happened over the last few years is really looking at how do we focus on that individual. Nick Winkelman's work has been influential within that, and just really thinking more about the science and application of cueing and how you can create rich sensory environments of kinesthetic, auditory, and visual cueing to really enhance the learning.
It's cool that you say that because when I've gone into the rehab world post strength training and throwing, I've come across this DNS stuff, which stands for dynamic neuromuscular stabilization. I teach for them, but they've been a huge influence. And one of the lines that they have that kind of like parallels with what you're saying really well is perception is a prerequisite for control. So you said sort of like this rich sensory environment, and the more sensory information, I have to say this word for Brad Muse, afferentation. The more afferentation, that's information going to the brain, the more information it has to then make corrections. And that's kind of what's, executing a good swing or Turkish get-up is all about is motor control. But also what I love about kettlebells is it's motor control under very, very high metabolic demand sometimes, under very, very ballistic, scenarios sometimes. And then in the example of the Turkish get-up for sustained amount of times, if you go all the way to sinister under, tremendous amounts of load. So that's cool. Yeah, I'll be excited to kind of watch you coach again. I'll probably be watching, as a coach just to kind of see how you're doing and learn maybe more from that. But I did want to ask a question. So you have the 101, and in my head, the kettlebell swing, to chest level, and then the Turkish get up are kind of the two hallmark movements in my head for StrongFirst. Is that consistent with the school of StrongFirst, or is it just kind of like, no, those are just two popular movements?
I'd say the answer lies in the middle. They are definitely foundational. The ability and the reason they're foundational is the swing is built off your deadlift. So by learning the hip hinge, knowing how to get into those good positions, spread the load throughout the body to be able to absorb and redirect force is something that is going to benefit a ton of people. And the student in front of you may dictate that you're spending a week on deadlifting, 10 minutes on deadlifting, 3 months in deadlifting. It goes all over the place. And the benefit of the kettlebell deadlift, and people think, oh, it's too light, you can't get anything out of it. The positioning, cueing, and techniques you learn in the process of learning that kettlebell deadlift pay off so much when you go into any other movement. And then Gray Cook has best described the get up as alignment with integrity under load. And so when I'm looking to teach somebody how to efficiently move their body and understand how to coordinate and move around that load, because the get up is really a support lift. It's not a grind. It's not a ballistic. It's a support lift. And so you're maintaining that locked out position, but then moving your body through all these different planes underneath of it. I also really enjoy getting somebody to press throughout the steps of their get up. Because if you're learning to get up properly, you're doing it at a very moderate or lightweight. You start building a very resilient shoulder and figuring out how to maintain your stability and move around that bell and produce, that press from a bunch of different angles. So whether we sell it from the concept of laying that stability foundation, both in the midsection and the shoulder with the great overhead position, or however you want to sell the get up, I just think a day without get ups is a bad day. And so, and then building the foundation of the deadlift into the swing. And, what you may find is that the swing takes a little bit longer, and I may end up getting you to clean a kettlebell before I get you to swing it. But those two movements still do form the foundation.
Yeah, what I love about, I love what you said there, because when I'm teaching a kettlebell workshop for a swing, I'll go through the deadlift, and then we'll talk about foot loading and bracing, all that kind of stuff. And then the last thing that I do really before we actually do the swing is I go back to the deadlift again. And, in my, 30,000 swings, you sort of realize, although the bell is sort of like penduluming back and forth, it's actually a very linear movement. You're basically just going up and down, and the bell is sort of like pulling you into like a little bit of a hingey movement there, but using the deadlift and have that vertical drive where you're driving your feet straight into the ground and you're driving your head straight up towards the sky. There's not really like this rotary movement. It's really a linear movement, and the deadlift is a killer way to teach that.
Absolutely. And just as Chuck Norris does not do push-ups, he does earth downs. The kettlebell deadlift and swing is not a pull. It's an earth down. You are literally trying to shove the earth down away from you. And so that the power that you can produce there, and then the force you absorb and redirect, that is the secret sauce of kettlebell training as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, the redirect one is interesting because, if you do like a normal deadlift, there's not a static reflex that you get with the barbell deadlift, because the barbell hits the ground, you're basically offloaded for a second. Even if you're doing a touch and go, you're not getting a stretch reflex. Whereas in a kettlebell deadlift, or sorry, kettlebell swing, especially if you're doing a heavier swing, there is absolutely a stretch reflex here. So that absorbing that, through the hip, through the knees, is going to translate into any sort of sport: cutting, Olympic weightlifting, CrossFit, basketball, all that kind of stuff, which is great. Those are definitely two fundamental movements. Now, when we get into the 201 class, that one's got, you said, clean and press. That one's got the snatch. Are those would you classify those also as kind of fundamentals, and you're just sort of like going to cover each of those, all those movements in just the two classes?
Absolutely. Outside of the kettlebell front squat, we've had 6 foundational movements within the SFG1 for 20 years, over 20 years. And so we swing, we get up, we clean, we press, we snatch, we squat, inch wide, mile deep. I know there's certs out there teaching you 150 different movements to do with a kettlebell.
It's getting so ridiculous. Like, and it's cool that the kettlebell flow stuff has a place and whatever, but like, I always look like, if you watch someone doing this crazy movement, I'll be like, well, what are you trying to do here? Like, are you trying to work on core? Are you trying to get explosive? Because I've got better exercises for each one of those. And if you try to just do everything into one big, where you get into like this circus trick range, it's like, okay, cool, you can balance on a Bosu ball and do a kettlebell snatch, but I'm not sure that's going to translate into your performance, your life very well.
100%. So we keep our focus on the foundations, on the essentials. I'm 20 plus years into swinging a kettlebell, and I'm still working on my swing.
Yeah.
I think my swing's pretty good, but every time I touch a bell, I learn something, and I'm trying to do it better every time I do it. There's a famous cellist whose name I can never pull out of the ether, who at the age of 92 was asked why he was still practicing. And he said, because I think I'm starting to make progress. And
It's awesome.
he's a lifetime into the dedicated practice of that instrument, still practicing at 92 and recognizing that has room to grow and progress to make. And I think that's probably where exercise falls down versus if you talk to a martial artist, they're going to be practicing their front kick and their basic straight punch. If you talk to a musician, they're practicing their chords. They're never not practicing the fundamental things that lay the foundation for greater skill and progress. Exercise, we throw it out the door. We think in 6 weeks we've adapted to an exercise, so now I have to go from standing bicep curls to seated bicep curls because somehow that's massively different enough to make a difference. And so, you know, we keep the focus very much like a musician or a martial artist on practicing those fundamentals. And the clean is where we do have the projection of force in the swing. Now with the clean, we're zipping that force up into a very vertical line, and you know, apparently Zoom thinks I'm giving all kinds of thumbs up here. So, and then the press, foundational upper body strength movement. I know
Humbling.
the more I have pressed over the last 3.5, 4 years, the more I learn and love the movement. And the snatch is just, you know, it's not called the czar of kettlebell lifts for nothing. It is a ton of fun to take that clean and put it all the way overhead and really get that. In fact, we've been doing Simple and Sinister February. I write the newsletters, and I came up with the idea for it. So then I thought, well, shoot, now I have to do it. So I've been doing Simple and Sinister February for the month of February, and in March, I think it's going to be a snatch-tastic month.
Nice. I like it. Yeah, the snatch is, I mean, I just love that movement. But the swing, you know, back to the simplicity and the nuance there, you know, it's basically just a ballistic hip hinge. And it is remarkable how much detail and nuance there is in that movement. So I don't know. I mean, at this point, I've probably done 50,000 swings in the last 3 years or 2 years even. I don't know. It doesn't matter, but like a lot. And even like the subtlest little changes, like, okay, well, what am I doing with the free shoulder? You know, what do I think about, you know, driving my head to the sky, or how am I bracing, or the foot loading? And so it's a really, really cool movement. Now, to sort of spin this clinically, the thing that's great about the hip hinge, especially if you peel back and you just do like a deadlift, is, I mean, so many people have a dysfunctional hip hinge where they're going to couple the motion, meaning they're going to use when they flex their hip. So that's when you're sort of like, you know, your thigh gets closer to your torso. In the case of a standing hip hinge, your torso is going towards your thigh, but then they also round their back over. And clinically, I will use a kettlebell deadlift, and then depending on the exercise goals of the person, I can actually take somebody and start teaching them how to actually swing as part of their rehab. Because if you can ballistically swing or ballistically hip hinge, that means you have a lot of motor control over that movement, which is fantastically powerful for patients with low back pain.
100%. Separating hip from spine is essential. And it is something that I like the putting it together into saying we couple those movements because we absolutely do. And sometimes that's structural. I know for me, I have a very high alpha angle at my femur. So my femoral head doesn't change shape when it should. I have cam style FAI and labral tears and all kinds of stuff on both hips. And so when my hip stops because of the impingement, I have no choice. Yeah, I have no choice but to move from my back, because your body doesn't sit there and go, oh no, wait, that's bad for us. Your body goes, he wants to do it.
Keep going?
So we're going to just, option A is not available. Option B, and you move from someplace where you really don't want to be moving. And so whether it's the stick on the back to really start to separate out that spine from hip movement, there's all kinds of strategies there, but I as you do, I believe that is such an important thing to teach folks.
Yeah, it's a great movement for sure. Now, let's talk more broadly about kettlebell training. So, what is the difference in your opinion? You've obviously been in strength training, and as an athletic trainer, you've been around the rehab side of things. What is the main differences and maybe the benefits of kettlebell training compared to traditional, you know, barbell, dumbbell, machine centered strength training.
Absolutely. So with a kettlebell, well, let's start with the barbell and dumbbell. The center of mass lines up with your hand. So with the kettlebell, thick handle, offset center of mass, and whether that's projected out in front of you in a swing, clean, or snatch, it does rotate over, but for those other two movements. But whether that center of mass is projecting away from you, or rotating over, or laying on the back of the wrist, that displaced center of mass can literally help guide your body into better positions and load the body in a way that really unlocks a lot of stability and mobility. Now, past a certain point, that offset center of mass presents a challenge to be overcome, which I think you're feeling now in your military press journey. And but that thick handle offset center of mass makes it something that is really unique, and the benefits there are just huge. And then we already alluded to it, but that overspeed eccentric that we get into. And I've been on a force plate two-hand swing with just a 24-kilo bell, producing 3 to 3.5 times my body weight eccentric load at the bottom of a swing that I then have to turn around and turn into another hip extension. Tremendous benefit to that. So that, you wouldn't think that a cannonball with a handle on it was such an elegant design that has a lot of benefit to it, but that's exactly what it has. And so that's the secret sauce.
Yeah, I mean, like you said that the center of mass it basically is a little bit off. It's not right, through the hand. One of the things that the kettlebell training does that I think is highly valuable is that using it is sort of awkward and cumbersome. Now, you could, of course, get better and better at it, but if we're talking about, just being very sort of like stable and functional, kettlebell training, in my opinion, can be useful really for three reasons. So, one is that it is awkward and cumbersome to lift. And when you do that, your body doesn't exactly know how it's going to behave. It can't accurately and precisely predict how it's going to behave. And so then that means your body has to kind of like adapt and modulate, which means it's going to sort of have to kind of figure out how to execute every movement, even though the press you've done them 1,000 times, because it's a little bit awkward. You have to, the stabilizers and the nervous system have to work much, much harder. So that's a good one. It's also, for the most part, other than the Turkish get up, which is it's kind of its own thing, the movements are very functional in that they emulate, everyday sort of movements, pressing, hinging, deadlifting, that kinds of things. And then the last one is almost everything that you do. Actually, nothing that I've seen you guys do of your basic foundational movements is isolating. They're all sort of what we would call polyarticular, multiple joints. And those are also those are three different definitions of functional. And as someone that does, a lot of that kind of rehab and values, functionality in both my patients and the athletes that I work with, kettlebells are very, very powerful to that end.
100%. Movement variability is something that, well, if we didn't have movement variability, golf would be really boring.
Yeah.
Because you'd actually be able to master the golf swing or the tennis serve or the, insert movement here sort of conversation. And it is the difference between the reps where there's a ton of benefit. And as much as I'm trying to execute every swing the same or every press in the same groove, I know there's variability in there, and there's tremendous benefit to that because I'm always learning.
Yeah, for sure. I know you're a busy dude, so let's just finish with one more question here, and that is, who is kettlebell training for?
So I have to give two answers. A, everyone,
Right.
and B, almost everyone.
Okay.
I have a couple of students over the years who have not done kettlebell training. Sometimes they just don't want to. And as I like to tell my students, I'm cruel, but I'm not heartless. So, if that's something you really don't want to do, there's other ways to train. I get that. I'm still probably going to sneak it into your hand for a deadlift or a single leg deadlift or a one arm row or something of that nature. But so, yes, there are always the ends of the bell curve and people for whom this training, might not be the best option immediately. So I have to say that and just being, philosophically honest, and I can't sit here and say that everybody on the planet should do it. Yeah, I think eventually everybody can and should in some fashion. But yeah, so it's everybody with a few exceptions on the ends of the bell
Sure.
curve. And so, and we've already kind of nailed down the rest of the answer there. It's for everybody because it is so foundational. It puts you in those real life positions. Going back to the kettlebell deadlift, the way I can teach you to involve your lats, separate your spine from your hips, push force into the ground, start mastering bracing, you know, all of those things transition into pretty much everything else you want to do in your life. If I can get you doing a good get up, and that doesn't mean coming all the way to standing. For some people, doing a good get up means going to the hand and back down. So the pieces are greater than the whole, as far as I'm concerned, with the get up, where I can take a few foundational pieces of the get up and still get great results for the person that I'm working with. And like we talked about, that thick handle, offset center of mass, stronger grip, more stabilization and mobility. I mean, I I'm 20 plus years into using the tool, and people will ask, "Well, have you ever done modality X or have you done technique Y?" And I'm like, "Well, no." And they're like, "Why not?" I have a kettlebell. Yeah, but this
Yeah.
does this. I'm like, "Yeah, but I have a kettlebell. I think it
Yeah.
does that too."
Yeah. I mean, there's, as a former Olympic weightlifter and as a thrower, um, and now someone that's kind of really more of a kettlebell athlete than anything else, I think kettlebells, can be for anyone in the sense that you can use it as your primary tool, as you and I both do. That could be someone that's got 20 plus years of experience like yourself. That could be somebody that just, is 60 years old and they just want to kind of start moving better, and you can just, load appropriately. Um, but I also think that you can use it as a really, really powerful accessory training for things like, I mean, I was a thrower. Now we would actually throw puds, which this is in the 90s. So it's a kettlebell basically that we would
Mhm.
weld. We weren't doing snatches with them, but we would like wind and, just do like more like throwing things. But again, awkward offset center of mass, big handles. It was great. But for a lot of other athletes, you don't have to do it as your primary movement. You can use it as very powerful accessory training to train ballistics, to increase movement variability. And honestly, the metabolic component of it, which we didn't really touch on, that can be trained in a swing. So if you get somebody like, I don't know if you've heard, but because I'm stupid, I'm trying to train for an unbroken sinister. Um, so I did 100 swings with the 88 the other day, heart rate at 179, and then I roll straight into 10 Turkish get-ups. And it's just kind of cool. So the metabolic challenge there, or what I call loaded respiration with an elevated heart rate, I mean, it's just incredibly powerful and could be useful for a soccer player. But you don't have to use it as the primary tool. So I think kettlebell training is highly variable. It can be used as a primary modality, and it can also be used as an accessory. So great. I don't want to keep you. Like I said, I know you're a busy guy. Just to let everybody know, we do have this brilliant teacher here coming May 17th, Friday, May 17th, gonna be in Plain City at Peak Human Performance with Alex White and his team. In the afternoon, 1 to 5, that is going to be Kettlebell 101, where he's going to go over the Turkish get up and then also the swing, which are the two movements in simple and sinister. And then the following morning, Saturday, May 18th, from 8 to noon, is it, Brett?
Yes, 8 to 12:30.
8 to 12:30. He's going to do 201, where he's going to cover the clean and press and the snatch and some other movements there. So we'll have links, in the post or whatever like that to check that out, please. But Brett, I'm super excited to learn from you here in a couple months, and I'm thankful that you were able to hop on a call and make some time for me.
Thanks for having me on, and really appreciate the opportunity, and look forward to being in your town and experiencing a little bit of what Columbus has to offer.
We got a lot, so we'll see you soon. Thanks a lot.